Hello, my name is Scott Chacon. I'm the CEO of GitButler. I also happen to be a certified wine expert. So join us on Bits and Booze, where we drink some and we do some bits. The bit today is going to be a job interview where I try to see if I can get a job as a Git expert. Let's see if you know what I know. Welcome everybody to Bits and Booze. We have a special edition of Bits and Booze. Nico, also a Git butler, with me today to help out with something that we saw online. But apparently, some companies will ask Git interview questions, or like interview questions that involve Git.
I'm glad you guys didn't ask me when I came.
We didn't. I didn't even think about this as being a thing. But I thought it would be really fun to sit down and have you ask me Git interview questions as though I was interviewing for a job, and see if I can pass them, right? Because very technically, on paper, if I applied to a job at your company, right? You're the tech guru here. I'm trying to get a job at your company. Can I pass? I wrote a book on this. Right?
Let's hope you can pass.
Can I pass?
I have a few good ones written down.
The Git interview questions. So hopefully it's useful to people that are going and interviewing for Git stuff. Like, you know, and if I don't, then, you know, it'll make them feel better. So before we get into that, before I put on my college shirt and come to apply for a job at your company, you are German American.
I am.
Is that? Do you have dual nationality?
I do. Yeah, I have dual citizenship. So I was born in the U.S., but to a German mom, so I got both.
And so you've been here. You spent a lot of time here before, and then you've lived here for a long time now, and you're fluent in German. And so we decided, let's do some German wines. All the wines so far that we've done in Bits and Booze have been French. I got a Riesling, but I didn't get a normal Riesling. Riesling is a very German grape, right? Like you don't really use Riesling, the Riesling grape, anywhere else. We have a sparkling Riesling, which I'm not even sure if I've had a lot of sparkling Rieslings before, or Sekt, right? How would you would call it Sekt? One time, Sekt. Yeah. As a special treat, I'm gonna teach you how to savor it. So I'm gonna teach you before you interview me to try to curry favor. And help my chances.
Let's hope some of the wine survives.
So we have this beautiful saber. This is actually very cool. It's a very cool William Sonoma looking saber.
It looks fancy.
I'll have you do the honors. Yeah.
Do I take the plastic and the wrapping stuff off?
You take the plastic off, you take the cage off, the metal part. So what we're gonna wanna do is we're gonna wanna run the saber across sort of the neck of the bottle.
Let's try
that. Like a 45-degree angle along the lip, just bam. Like swing through, like baseball. You're American, you know baseball.
All right, here goes nothing. That's pretty clean, look at that.
That's great, look at that. Beautiful saber. A lot of extra wine.
Got a little bit of cleaning up to do later, but
as I'm the interviewee, I'm gonna put on my college shirt, you know, to make sure that you know that I'm taking it seriously. We should say beforehand that I don't know what questions are coming.
You do not, we have not talked about any of the questions beforehand.
It's nice to meet you. Right. Scott.
Mr. Chacon, nice to meet you. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you. We know we've been through many rounds. You're here finally at your 4th round, and we just want to make sure you really know your stuff.
Sure.
You hyped up your Git experience in your CV, and we're just here finishing off the last final technical interview round.
Yeah.
We'll start off with an easier one.
Okay.
And it's going to be, what is the difference between git pull and git fetch?
So git fetch negotiates with the server, figures out what objects it needs that it doesn't have, pulls those objects down, and updates all the references that you have locally. Git pull is git fetch plus a git merge, right? So it'll fetch that down, it knows what branch you're on, hopefully it has some sort of upstream tracking branch, and then it will try to merge that into whatever you have. A lot of people will use pull -- rebase and try to rebase that. Actually, the GitButler client will just kind of fetch in the background all the time, right? Like fetch is just this, I'm on the network, I can get objects down and then I can do something with them. And pull is an extra step, but there's nothing you can't do with fetch and merge that you can do with git pull.
Let's move on to another not Git-based question. We really want to see how you think. And this is going to be one out of the Google playbook here.
Sure.
How many golf balls do you think you can fit in a school bus?
Oh, that's a great question.
Yeah.
A standard size school bus, a short school bus.
This is not the American short bus. This is a standard American sized school bus. And I don't know if there's various size golf balls, but we're talking about your normal.
We're gonna have to estimate, right? Let's say that there's 40 seats. In a standard school bus, right? 2 by 20. Let's say.
Wait, 2 by 20. Oh, because
like two rows of
benches,
20.
right? And 4 kids.
Let's say that you can fit. I'm trying to think of golf ball. We got 4 this big, so let's say you can fit 200 in
like how many?
like
Maybe
top of a
how many
seat.
golf balls is like a middle schooler? Maybe
Yeah,
we can think of it that way.
how many golf balls is a middle schooler?
Yeah, and then we can calculate up from there.
Let's say 1,000 per row times
Yeah.
40, so that's
Seems reasonable.
40,000. And then let's double it because there's a bunch of headroom, right?
Right.
So let's say 80. I'm going to round it out to 100,000 golf balls.
That was very smart, Mr. Chacon.
Thank you.
A lot of applicants forget about the headroom. That was great.
You got to keep the headroom in mind.
Can't forget about the headroom.
And I mean,
yeah.
I had to round it out because you
Yeah.
have the place that Sandra Bullock would sit like to drive the bus,
Sure.
over the ramp.
All right, let's go back to some Git questions. This is going to be another easier one, but can you explain? Or I hope it's going to be another easier one. Can you explain Git cherrypick?
Like the funny thing about Git is that each commit is a snapshot, right? It's like a series of tarballs.
Yeah.
And so it's like, here's the entire state of the project every single time. That's technically how it stores it. But if you run gitlog or gitlog-p or something, you see a patch that's sort of associated. Here's the difference between this one and the one that came before it. And a lot of version control systems before Git stored data this way. They stored the differences because it seems logical, right? Like it's less storage space.
Right.
And Git does it very cleverly, but like technically, you're just saying, here's the whole state of the project, the whole state of the project. And so it doesn't store the patches, it calculates the patches on demand. And so a cherry pick is saying, calculate the patch for this commit as though it were a patch, and then commute it somewhere else, right? Like put it on top of something of a different head, a different branch.
Okay.
And so that's technically what a cherry pick is. The way that it does it is actually, it uses the logistics of a 3-way merge. So when you cherry pick something, it does where you're cherry picking it to, the one you're cherry picking, and then the first parent of the one you're cherry picking.
Okay.
And it does a 3-way merge essentially between those, and it applies that. And so it's not exactly extract the patch and apply the patch.
Yeah.
It's a little bit smarter than that. I had to learn that actually fairly recently, that's what it does. But technically, if you want to think about it, it's take the patch, apply the patch somewhere else.
Yeah. I was about to say, we would have allows you to apply a specific patch from one branch to another. Mr. Chacon.
Si, senor.
What are some of your greatest weaknesses?
Oh boy.
Classic interview question. You know what?
I work too hard.
Yeah, it's always something people always
I care about my company too much.
People always try to spin it and sell themselves with that. Exactly. Yeah.
My biggest weakness is probably trusting people too much. Like I feel like even running companies and stuff, like I don't question people's motives enough or sort of like I just assume everybody is doing the best that they can when sometimes they have ulterior motives, and sometimes it's better to push back on people. And I honestly, very, very honest answer, I feel like that's still a problem, right, for me. And I feel like being in Germany and working in Germany has helped that to a degree, where I try to step outside that comfort zone and be very honest with people and be like, I'm disappointed with this. Let's see if we can work on that, right?
All right, let's move on to another good question.
Sure.
Let's see what we have here. This is going to be another easy one, I hope. What is Git bisect and how would you use it?
Oh, what's Git bisect? That's a good question, actually.
I feel like that maybe, I was going to say, I hope it's easy. I feel like the general idea is easy, but maybe not.
So I run into this a lot with the merge versus rebase sort of questioning, right? Or a lot of people really like rebase because you have a linear history, and theoretically, every patch should be testable. And so then a bisect is nice. Because very technically what a bisect is you say, something very specific that is testable doesn't work.
Yeah.
And you don't know when it was introduced. And so you want to know, why was this introduced? Like, how did this happen?
Yeah.
And so Git has this very clever sort of mechanism. But I've probably only, in reality, used this 4 or 5 times, maybe.
I feel like every time I try to use it too, it's like almost like too complicated.
Yeah,
and I just kind of do it.
It's a very strange interface to be like, what's bad, what's good,
and I
like
just do
how
it
to
manually.
get started, right?
Yeah.
Like it's like start and bad and good, and you have to mark these things.
Yeah, it's almost easier just to do it manually, right? You just check out this commit, you check out that commit, and then. But that's what I always end up falling back to.
Hundreds of commits. Technically, what you do is you say the one that I'm on is bad.
Yeah.
Clearly, I can reproduce the problem.
Yep.
I know this wasn't a problem at this point, right?
Yep.
And so you can go back 100 commits and say it was not a problem here.
Yeah.
Like for whatever reason, I know that wasn't it. And so it's something in between this. And I have 100 commits, but instead of checking out all 100 commits, it will check out the middle one, and then just sort of assume if that one's good, you say that one is good or that one is bad. And if that one is bad, then it will say, well, then the badness was introduced somewhere before that.
Right.
And if it's good, then the badness was introduced somewhere after that. And so you just keep halving it, right?
Yeah.
So if
it's
you
like
have 100,
it's like a binary search of
exactly.
splitting
You have
in half.
100, and then you test one, and now you have 50, and then you test one, and now you have 25, right? And so on and so forth. And you kind of get down to, okay, this is clearly the first time that this was a problem, and maybe it gives you some insight as to why that was a problem.
You find the commit that introduced the issue, and you see author yourself, and you're like, God damn it.
we were gonna do a bits and booze on git bisect, but it's not a complicated command really, right?
Yeah.
You can do complicated things with it. Like you can give it a script to run that's like outside of the tree and say like for everything run this, and then it will automatically 1 or 0 sort of exit status, or 0 or non-zero exit status say whether it's good or bad, and it'll kind of automate its way through the process.
Yeah.
But it always takes longer to set up that shit than it does to actually save time
like
to
with any
run
script, right?
Yeah. The problem obviously comes if you're doing a lot of merges, and then it has to walk different sort of branches of the merge.
When you don't have a linear history.
There's no way of saying, well, like which branch of, if it's in between this merge commit and the one before, and there's a bunch of different branches that were merged in like which ones do I go down to figure out where it was introduced, that becomes slightly more difficult.
So I'm gonna stick with the
You're gonna...
the Git questions. What is the reflog, and how does it differ from gitlog?
Ah, that is a good question. Actually, there's a bunch of reflogs. So reflog is a command that looks through. So every time you run a git command, it stores kind of the state that you were in before you changed the reference. If you're on a branch and you're doing stuff, it will, every time that you merge or commit or rebase or change whatever the reference is pointing to, it will record that in this nice log. And then you can run git reflog and see sort of where your branch has been, like everywhere that it's pointed to. So you run a rebase, every time that's doing a pick sort of in the rebase, it records every step of that, and where you were before it started and where it ended and things like that. And so you can go back and kind of rewind history to a degree, like not everything, but at least when you do something that moves a reference. And so that's the reflog. The log is really just sort of walking the references and saying, here's everything that came before it, which the reflog can reference stuff that isn't referenced by any of your branches anymore. If you rebase something, all those commits that were left in the dust, you can find them in the reflog. You won't find them in gitlog.
Okay.
Right?
So it can be a way to maybe get data back that you thought you otherwise might have lost?
In some cases. In a lot of cases. If you have changes to files, then you like do a hard reset or something that's not stored in the reflog. It's not an operations log, right? So it's not every operation you do. It's just anything that changes a reference.
Okay.
So it can be helpful. For most of these questions, it's kind of interesting how often I've used them. There are individuals that will use some of these things a lot. I found that I'm a fairly typical developer. I do complicated stuff every once in a while, but like for the most part, reflog comes in like once a year, maybe. Like I really, it's nice that it's there. I actually, if we want to plug Git Butler again, or even Jiu-Jitsu or whatever, something that has an operations log where it's like, oh, I just did a couple of things and I just want to go back a couple steps or undo the last thing I did. I find that much more valuable than the reflog. I find the reflog a very clunky sort of interface for that. It will only reference things that were committed, right? So anything that wasn't committed, you'll never get back. If like it's not going to be stored anywhere. It's really only updates to references, and references can only point to commits. So you have to have committed it somewhere. And the other thing that kind of sucks about it is you can't push it anywhere, right? Like reflogs are, you can't transfer them somewhere, which kind of is unfortunate.
That's why you have an operations log in Git Butler.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Exactly.
Sell it harder. If you look at a project called Git Branchless, there's a new hook in Git, and I completely forget what the name is. So you can mark me a demerit on this one. I don't remember
-1.
There's a Git hook where essentially after every significant operation, it has a hook, and you can run anything you want to. The Git Branchless project takes advantage of this to say every time you're doing anything significant, I'm gonna store this in my own sort of operations log, and then it implements a thing called, you can run git undo. If you install their tool set, they give you a bunch of extra commands, and one of them is git undo, and it takes advantage of this to say, you have to do like git branchless init to make sure it installs that script, and then you're doing all your normal stuff, and it's just kind of keeping this operations log, and you can run git undo if anything goes wrong, and it'll kind of go back one step. So actually undoing from the reflog is really difficult because you have to run git reflog and then figure out, like a rebase is 5 entries in the reflog, right? So if you want to undo a bad rebase, you have to figure out where did this start, and then like get reset hard, and
to that commit,
like head at what's the
square brace or whatever.
Square brackets, 5, right?
Yeah.
Like 5 steps back or whatever.
So what you're saying though is that this is a really good CLI version of Git Butler.
Git branchless
and we should cut this so people don't know Git alternative.
Don't fucking Git branchless is nice. I mean, there are other tools that do this. I think obviously Git Butler does this very nicely.
Yeah.
Of a sort of undo stack, Jujitsu does this nicely. But like I think an oplog is a little bit more valuable than the reflog. But the reflog is it's what's built in. It's good.
Yeah.
That was a very long answer.
That was a very long answer.
Sorry.
Thank you. We've learned a lot on our side as well.
Some more wine while you think about your next question.
As a follow-up to that, actually, reflog, is there any other commands that kind of build on that log to use it for something, or is it's just there for other people to use as they wish?
The reflog?
Yeah. Is there like another Git command that kind of builds on that, or I don't know?
I can't think of anything.
No,
I can't think of anything that does that. I mean, there's a lot of things that look at it, like the Git GC will look at it to figure out what it shouldn't prune, right? Because it's still reachable. Like there's still reachability. Like
gotcha.
Git Butler actually abuses
that's where we hide some of the.
We hide references in there so that they won't be GC'd, and we're fairly certain people won't use it and kind of see dumb shit.
Yep.
I can't think of any of the other main commands that care about the reflog.
Yeah.
It's really just a history.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right, Mr. Shakan.
Yeah.
Thank you. Let's continue with some more Git questions. I have one here. Explain to me how Git's garbage collection works and how you can optimize repository size.
Hey, booey. I know 2 things that it does that I care about.
Yeah.
And then I can throw out some keywords for things that I don't understand very well.
Those will make you sound smart.
Cruft packs and things like that. And one is it will remove loose objects. So if you rebase something, there'll be objects that are left over. There'll be commit objects that aren't referenced anymore.
That aren't referenced. Yeah.
Because you've kind of moved those commits, and so the old ones still exist in the database, and nothing points to them. You don't need them anymore.
Got some dangling.
Or you go through and you like remove a reference in it, like a file in a tree, and rewrite the thing, or do commit amend or something, and write a new commit message, and you'll leave along some cruft, right? Like Git Butler does this a lot because we'll constantly be writing this sort of fake head commit, and we have hundreds of them that'll be left behind.
Leave a little
and
trail
so you don't need them anymore. They do take up space, and so GC will look at stuff that's not referenced. I think the default is if the M time on the file, which is in the index and stuff, is more than 2 weeks old. Oh, sorry.
It's not 2 weeks.
It's not in the index. It is 2 weeks, I think, or last time I checked. But it's on the object that's in the database. So if it's on disk, that object, it will look at like when was that written. If it was written more than 2 weeks ago, and it's not referenced by anything, so it'll walk everything it can find, like every reference and everything in the reflog and everything, and say what all objects can I reach, and everything that's in my database that I can't, that's not in any of that, is probably cruft, and so I'll just delete it, right? And so it just writes it out and deletes it.
Yeah.
That can be problematic if you have references to stuff that's external to that, right?
Okay.
Like we've done.
Yeah.
And it'll delete the object, and then you have corrupted database basically. But for the most part, it's relatively good at saying, I don't need these things. It's been a while since anybody's looked at them.
Yeah.
I'll take them out. The second thing it'll do is it'll compact references into a file. So instead of every reference is in an individual file, it'll put all of them in sort of one file.
Okay.
So packed ref. And that is good in that it's faster to access in some cases. It's slower to delete. It's slower to delete because essentially you have to remove an entry and then rewrite the whole file again if you want to delete a reference.
Is that just a text file, or is that some sort of binary?
That's a text file.
It's just a text file.
There's a packed ref file in .git.
Yeah.
Then, because normally your references are one file per reference, right? And so you just have, if you have hundreds of thousands of them,
thousands of files.
It's very fast to delete something, right? It's 01, right? Like you just delete the file. But if you have to go through a file of 100,000 and take one line out and then rewrite the whole file, it's relatively slow. So but it will pack them because a lot of times that's much faster. And then it will repack files or objects into pack files. So a lot of times when you're creating Git objects is just writing them as loose objects, like all these objects on the disk, and then you run GC and it'll compact them into pack files. But like a push will do that as well, or whatever. So yeah, there's lots of stuff it does. I feel like this is a good 50 percentile one where I know half of what it does and I have an okay understanding, and I probably should have a better understanding with the GitHub background, because like this really matters on if you're a Forge, right? Like if you're a server,
tons
right?
of
Like
repositories.
you have to optimize this stuff all the time, and they're dealing with stuff like multi-pack index bitmaps and like all of like these crazy things that like if you and I are running Git on our laptops, so we don't care about, but like if you're running these massive Chromium sort of repositories on GitHub, you have to care about how fast is it to say doing, you know, if you run like Git ls remote or something and it's like, okay, here's all the references on the remote. It's one thing if there's 50 of them, like, you know, our repositories
there's a couple developers.
If there's, you know, 40,000 and it has to put all of that over the network every single time that you're doing anything, then it really sucks, right? So anyways.
Well, thank you.
Sorry, to over-answer every question.
You definitely hit a lot of the keywords there. We'll give you like 0.8 out of 1 on that one.